Welcome back to another Full Zor episode. And in this episode, we're going over memory. How does memory work? How do computers store memory? And a little fun fact about memory that I just recently learned. When Intel was starting up in 1968, the first little computer chip that they sold was a 64-bit memory chip. So that shows how important memory is, because that was the first chip that one of the biggest CPU manufacturers ever made was memory. So in this, we're going to start learning about how registers work and start learning the basics of a RAM module. We're going to start creating the RAM module that we will be using. So please stay tuned. We're going to roll the intro, then we're jumping right into the simulation, and we're going to get started with making this super ultimate best 8-bit computer so we can play games on it. So welcome back, everybody. We are in the simulation now, and now in this episode we're going to go over storage elements of the CPU. So let's go through the very basics first, and we're going to ease our way up to the more complex storage units, which will be our RAM module. So let's start with the absolute basics of computer storing logic. So let's say we have these two. Let me move the camera. Let's say we have these two gates. Very, very basic of a gate. Two NOR gates, okay? So we hook them up just like this. And we're going to call this pin. We're going to have a D for data. And then we're going to have... actually, we're going to have this one R for reset and then S for set. And I did that backwards, which I'm so sorry. Okay, R for set, and then R for reset. So if we have the module like this, it doesn't really do anything. But with storage element devices, we don't just take our inputs and connect it in this like linear fashion. So you see how the inputs are connected to the gates, and the gates are connected to the output, and that's exactly how our ALU works. It's all very linear. It goes from left to right. But with storage, it becomes not as linear because we take our outputs and we feed it back into our inputs, almost to create this storage device. And you can kind of see that it should have been this one. So that's kind of the basics of how this works. And we do the same thing with the other one. So now when we set it, it remembers, because if you look at it, the output of this NOR gate gets fed into the input of this one. And NOR, if both inputs are off, the output is on. So as long as one is on, then it turns off. And then when we press reset, we essentially turn this one off, which turns the other one on. So now we have this set, reset logic device. And this is the very bare minimum storage. It's called an SR latch. So now we're going to build something that's a little bit better than that. Instead of set and reset, we want one of the inputs to be save, and then we just save wherever the data is. So all we need is 4 NAND gates, this and a NOT gate. So again, this top one, this is going to be our data, and then this is going to be our latch. So we're going to call it latch. And just like with the SR latch, we are going to make our outputs into our inputs. So now when we press latch, it's going to save. And then we press the data is high and we latch, and then it switches. Just like that. So now we need an output. So we save the data, and then we continue to save the data. But there's a problem with this. So if the latch is on and we save, we get this mechanism right here. And as long as it's high, it's going to continue to save the data, which is something that we really don't want. But this is a good start. So we're going to call this a D-latch, DL. And so another type of storage device we can do is called a flip-flop. And we're going to make that one real quick. But this one's a little more complicated. It's almost two D-latches connected together. So it takes a lot of NAND gates. So this is our D flip-flop. As you can see, it looks very similar to two D latches connected together, but it's slightly different with the mechanism. So if we have data and we press save, I want you to notice that it doesn't immediately save the change. Once the clock signal goes from high to low, it then saves the change. And so this is how a D flip-flop works. So we can modify this circuit just a little bit, and then we can get something called a JK flip-flop. And that's what we're going to make next. So this is a JK flip-flop, and if 1 is on, if J is on, we save it as high. If K is on, we save it as low. So a different way of making a D flip-flop, but this thing has a secret. If both of them are on, we toggle between the two, and we get this toggling pattern. And I want you to notice something. So the rate at which I click it, the output's rate is equally half of that. So the frequency of I click it, let's say I click F 60 times per second, so 60 hertz, then the output's going to be 30 hertz. And so we can use this to increase or decrease clock frequencies or other, I guess, systems in our circuit if we need to, in order to make it run a little bit slower or a little bit faster. And this is called the JK flip-flop. And so this is all of the storage units that we really need for right now. So we're going to take 8 of our D flip-flops. I don't know how many this is. And then we're going to make something called a register out of them. So in the software, this is our register. This is it. So this is our save button, you can say. So save. Whoops. So when we click it, we save it. So we can add any number we want. And then on the lower edge of the save, we're going to actually save the data. So now let's go to our new circuit. And now we have this little 8-bit register that we can save data to and from for our convenience. So this is going to help us with our ALU because we can save data to it and do whatever we want to the data. So we have our 8-bit register, right? So we need to go back into it real quick, and we need to add an AND gate. And I completely forgot about this. Oh man, I gotta redo all of this now. That's fine. So So I really don't do this in most of my other CPU designs because it's not necessary for a small architecture of a state machine or CPU, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to do it in this one, and this is by no means the best way to do this, but this is a good way for a very simple CPU. And now we're going to have a save and a clock. So both of these need to be on for the machine to save it. And the clock's going to make sure everything stays in sync. And what the AND gate allows us to do is it's going to save a number if they both become high at the same time. We're still going to save that number, which is what we want. So this is now our new register. And we're going to make a small like RAM register cell. So what we're going to do is pretty simple. We're going to, I gotta find 8 tri-state. So a RAM, it's going to upload all of its data onto the same bus. So we have to have a tri-state buffer in order to prevent what we want to happen. So we'll have the clock hooked up to right here. We need 2 inputs and outputs, just like this. One's going to be for the column, and then one's going to be for the row. So column and row. And then we're going to AND those two together. So if the column and row of this register is picked, this AND gate will be lit up. And then we need 2 more buttons after that, which is going to determine whether we are saving it or we are trying to write it onto the system. So we're going to have save, and we're going to have out. And so now we need these 2 more AND gates to make this complex circuit. And like I said, this might not be the best way to make a RAM register, but this is certainly one way, and it's going to give us a similar output to all the other ways. So let's say our register is picked. So the column and row that our register is on is selected. We can either output the data or we can save the new data, but we have to wait for the clock signal. I kind of forgot about that in order to at least save the data. And we're gonna do the same thing actually with the output. So if we out it, we have to wait for the clock to go high for it to go into the bus. Same thing with save. If we need to change this in the future, we can, but I'm going to try to make this CPU really synced up and have the clock kind of control everything in the CPU like a real computer would actually do it, because we kind of got bypassed it a few times in our other models. But this is going to be our RAM. We call it our RAM cell. And so now that we have this RAM cell, we can make an array of these in columns and rows, and then we can have a little decoder to decode it so we can actually make a real RAM module. But that's gonna be it for this episode. We're kind of getting around in the upper of a video before people start like clicking off the video. But if you want to help out the channel in any way, shape, or form, you can look in the description. We got different things that you can go look at, but I'm not gonna like sell y'all too hard on it because I hate when people do that on YouTube, so I'm not gonna do it to y'all. But thank you for watching, and then next episode we're going to continue building our RAM module, and we'll have a fully functioning RAM to support our fully functioning ALU, and then we're going to build the other 2 essential parts of the computer. So thank you so much for watching, and please come back next week for another supercomputer building series.